Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I'm going to be talking more Star Frontiers. I had a really good response having done my first this was the other role-playing game that we used to play. And I actually refereed it, so it's got a lot of interesting connections for me. And don't worry, for those who think, oh, he's going to give up one role-playing game for the other, I'll still talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Just right now, to mix it up, let's talk about Star Frontiers. I did actually, just a little note for Warren Okuma, who commented, can you show a thing about how skills work? I am going to do that. That's sort of my next video. But I wanted to follow up my praise for Star Frontiers by kind of doing a negative video, which I don't really normally intend to do. But I want to talk about the first mistake that Star Frontiers made. And that is, when you buy the game, it comes with Crash on Volturnus as an initial module to try out. It's even called SF0. It's kind of like it's the pack-in game, if you will, for the Star Frontiers campaign. It comes with a map, a whole bunch of other stuff. So I wanted to talk about how Crash on Volturnus and the two follow-up modules, it was kind of a trilogy, were actually the biggest mistake of Star Frontiers, and why. So, when I very first played Star Frontiers, it was actually one of the D&D guys decided to actually host it. He said, yeah, I'm going to do Star Frontiers, try it out. And he did Crash on Volturnus, and I was so excited. I was like, great, I've got my abilities, I'm ready to start being in a science fiction world as a Star Wars / Star Trek / Doctor Who, you name it, fan. The sword and sorcery stuff is cool, but let's try something else. And I'm really looking forward to getting out there. I've seen in the module book, they've got like the detective and his Rust companion going after that spy and chasing the guy through the streets of the big city. It's like, yeah, this is what I'm looking forward to. So yes, he said, roll up your characters and we'll make a beginning. Unfortunately, right at the beginning, page 1, we've already run into the first problem that this module represents for me. And as a player, I found it very frustrating, and this is not a good look. This is not how you want to begin your science fiction campaign. It says right here, in addition, the party will find it wise to spend most of their money on items other than weapons when they start the adventure. All weapons will be destroyed early in the adventure. Like, this is a note to the referee when you've got your players all rolling up their characters and buying their stuff. Don't get them to invest deeply in, like, laser guns or robots or computer stuff or anything, or grenades, any of that kind of stuff, because the big problem that this adventure has, it pulls you by the nose. I mean, like, on probably the most extreme level, it pulls you through the nose right into a situation where you have nothing. In video games, there's a very similar analogy where, first of all, there's a thing where people can't stand invisible walls where, you know, you've got this wide open space, and how come I can't leave this area? I have to fight the boss to complete this chapter. I'm being stuck. I'm being forced to fight this guy because these invisible walls block me from being able to get elsewhere in the wide open spaces that I find myself. That's not the greatest. I mean, it's critical to, or it's a wise bit of criticism to point out to a video game developer, you've made this walled off area that people have to go through. There's also a thing in video games where they'll start you off with all the really cool stuff so that you can sort of learn as a tutorial, oh wow, I'm a real badass with all this stuff, and then right away you'll lose everything and you start at square one. This module, this is really guilty of that. So I just wanted to kind of brush upon each of these items. There's a few things right in the first few pages, then I'll sort of follow up with what the rest of the story is. But these are my problems with Crash on Volturnus. Alright, so who are we and what are we doing in this adventure? It's not a bunch of adventurers who have gotten together at the local tavern who decide to go off and explore the nearby hills like any typical Dungeons & Dragons adventure. With Volturnus, it's an alien planet on the outskirts of the frontier, and that in and of itself has a few problems with sort of the larger impact that would have on the campaign, but let's just concentrate on, you've just started, you've rolled up your characters, let's make a beginning to this game. So, you begin your adventure. The government of Truane Star has hired you to carry out a preliminary exploration of a newly discovered planet. You are to journey by Starliner to Volturnus and map as much of the planet as possible. The government is especially interested in contacting and studying intelligent races living on the planet. If you meet any intelligent races, you are to make friendly contact and learn as much about them as possible. Sure, sounds standard Star Trek kind of fare. But, okay, why are we being chosen by a government? I mean, if we're just first-level characters, we assume that we're a bunch of, hanging around the streets type, kids, 20-year-olds, whatever, who are just like, hey, I've finished, I'm out to seek my fortune. I've got a gun in my holster. I've got some credits in my pocket. And a government approaches this bunch and sends them on a vessel to go to an alien planet. That's an odd choice, but okay, sure. It really, we're already being forced into an odd role. The first expedition to Volturnus disappeared without a trace as soon as it entered the Zebulon system. If possible, you are to locate and rescue any survivors of this mission. You basically get handed a map of the Serena Dawn, which is the spaceship that you're on. So there you go. It's kind of got a variety of rooms and stuff, and it's a very limited cross-section of a giant spaceship, and there's a reason for that. In this section that talks to the referee, player characters begin the adventure in these cabins aboard the spaceship. They have no equipment with them except their toolkits. Note that weapons of any sort are not considered toolkits. Any weapons will be locked in the weapons locker on the bridge. So you've taken the characters off the street and you've taken away all of their weapons and you've shoved them onto a passenger liner. Okay. Back to the section you read to the players. During your journey, you have toured the areas of the ship not shown on the map. It contains recreation areas, the observation dome, the galley, and first-class living quarters and fuel storage. There is nothing else of interest in that area. Like, you can already see they've blocked off sections of the story, never mind the ship physically being locked off. They've blocked off areas and options for any players to get. It's like, no, you're stuck on this one map, and you can only move around in there. So, with no real surprise, the spaceship that you're on gets attacked by space pirates, who then come aboard, and we engage in a standard Dungeons and Dragons type scenario here. Now we've got villains running around these corridors, and we have to take them on. However, I'm not entirely sure what you're supposed to fight them with. I mean, all you've got are your toolkits. It does even mention in here, during the course of the adventure, the characters may try to question a captured space pirate. The pirate will cooperate only if he feels the characters will not injure him. Even then, he will reveal only two things. The weapons locker has been destroyed, and the bridge is guarded. So again, all of that stuff you just bought, it's gone. And can we redirect to the way the ship is going? No, it's been locked and it's guarded and you can't get there. So you're already being shoved down a very linear path. Also interesting, worth note, all of the pirates' descriptions, they carry very basic kind of guns, and they have one clip of ammunition. And it even says here, if they use up all their ammunition, they will then use the butt of their pistol to club people. And I'm just thinking, what kind of a reckless military force is this, that you only give everybody one clip of ammunition, and then, well, if that runs out, you're just going to have to butt them over the head? I mean, I guess these pirates are on a budget or something. They're not the greatest funded, I suppose, but you can tell this is like, okay, we don't want the players to have anything good. We've taken away all of their stuff. We've stripped them down to their bare hands. They have to somehow overcome pirates with one clip of ammunition in the gun, and then even when that's all happening, there's alarm bells going. There's a computer announcement saying emergency, emergency, evacuate the ship. Like you're already on this topsy-turvy ride, and you have to escape right away. Case in point, here it is, section 6. As the characters enter the escape bay, read the following description to them. The escape bay is empty except for one lifeboat. Looking into it, you notice an item inside labeled Survival Pack. This seems to be locked in some sort of cabinet. Suddenly, the Serena Dawn lurches, and you hear 3 loud explosions coming from the bridge. So, yeah, it's a one-way ticket here. The ship trembles after several seconds, then lurches again, and you hear another explosion. You hear various squeaks and groans as the ship twists and buckles under your feet. You have to get on board the lifeboat. Like, you have no choice. This is, again, really like shoehorning you on a massive level here to get onto this lifeboat and get off this ship as it's exploding from these very well-funded space pirates. And here we go again. The lifeboat is large enough for 8 characters, which you were informed at the beginning have this for up to 8 characters. As soon as the first character opens the entry hatch, a computerized voice will say, 1 minute to launch. Like, what sort of safety equipment is going to activate in 1 minute come hell or high water? I don't understand who designed these escape pods, but okay, or lifeboats. 1 minute to launch. Please fasten your seatbelts. 10 rounds later, the lifeboat will blast out of the escape bay. All characters should be in the lifeboat by this time. If the characters do not wish to enter the lifeboat immediately, tell them the ship is about to explode. Again, it's a one-way direction you can go here. Very linear. The lifeboat will then seek the nearest inhabitable planet and find a safe place to land. That's how this begins. That's 3 or 4 pages into the very first module. And I remember thinking to myself, really? This is the beginning of our space saga, is to be weirdly chosen to go to find this alien planet, and then the space pirates attack, and it's don't look too deep into the details as to how things are, how they know where we are, or how they managed to get on board this. I guess it's a pleasure vessel. I don't think it really says. No, it's a government vessel, so I guess it didn't have any armaments or any escort at all if it's going to an alien ship. Again, the more you think about it, it makes less and less sense the whole time. But the end result is they want you to get crashed on the planet. And I understand that. That's a trope that is kind of a darling of, pulp science fiction. You've got your characters on a stark landscape. In fact, there's even a picture inside that shows a bunch of humans, okay, here's our wreckage, and now we're on this alien planet. Oh, what fortunes will we find? But it's really, this is your introduction. This is what you're telling your players. This is what the game is like. And it's not a good look. And the other problem is as well, I suppose the TSR, when they were making this, they had a few other non-Dungeons and Dragons games already kicking around. I've already mentioned several times. Gamble World, Boot Hill, Gangbusters, like they've done Top Gun. They've done other types of adventure games. They know how to spread their wings a little bit. But with Starfrontiers, the very first adventure, it's like they want to strip away all of the access to technology and things that will benefit you and things that basically make this campaign stand out from the Dungeons and Dragons fare that you've had already, and essentially shove you back into a Dungeons and Dragons scenario. Here you are on an alien planet in a desert. Now what are you going to do? And there's random encounters, and you do... I'll briefly kind of go through the rest of the story, but I remember thinking to myself, like, this is not how I want to start my adventure. And it's unfortunate this was the launch of the game. All right, so you're on the alien planet. You've encountered a few crazy-looking creatures, and that part of it, okay, this is a typical Star Trek scenario or what have you. So, okay, it's perfectly acceptable. It's very good fare. I will now at least give something positive for this module, especially the very first episode of SF0. There's a bit where you actually encounter a poisoned well, and this is something that has always stuck with me, and I've always thought if I'm ever in this situation in real life, I might actually use this as a survival skill. Says here, from your vantage point high in the rocks, you see what appears to be a covered well 8 kilometers east of you. You go there, and you discover that the water is actually poisonous, which is kind of good. I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, like, we're on this alien world, and the aliens we encounter later are very weird. So a well of water being poisonous, at least that feels right from that perspective. The best part, and this is the thing that I always thought, if I'm ever stuck in a desert, I might use this. I really like this bit. If the characters boil the water and collect the condensed steam by trapping the vapor under a plastic tarp or similar item and collecting the liquid as it cools, the water will be safe to drink. And that was something, I thought there was another section in here, I couldn't find it. I thought there was another section of, like, desert survival tactics, one of which included that plastic sheet. There was a thing about, like, if you can stretch plastic over the desert and maybe put a rock in the center of it so it's bowed down and put a cup underneath, any of the sort of condensation or oxygen that rises up as the sun heats the ground is going to make condensation appear on this tarp, and they will all trickle to where the center rock is, and then it'll drip and you'll have a cup of water. And I remember thinking to myself, hey, that's pretty good. That's a handy piece of information if I ever find myself out in the desert again, which I've been a few times. So yes, it's not all negative. Now, to continue on, after this, we reach a point where we encounter our first aliens, the ul-mor, who are these weird octopus-looking creatures, although they have 9 tentacles, and they are riding these lizard-like creatures called lopers. They don't speak English, another positive. I like the fact that we're already in an alien world, and here comes this alien creature, and no, it doesn't just speak English. Star Frontiers does have a thing called a polyvox, where you can translate alien languages, but assuming that the players don't have one, and they do take a while to learn a language, this creature has an ability with one of its tentacles to kind of reach to the base of your spinal column and telepathically link and talk to you that way, communicate with you that way. So I was like, okay, now we're feeling that alien world thing. This is getting pretty good. I like this. We go with the ul-mor back to his sort of tribe, and he then tells us that we need to go and talk to some of the other races that are on the planet. So we go off and we meet the Kurabanda, who are this monkey-like race. This is where I get a little bit unhappy with the game, or with the campaign. We have gone from a very neat alien sort of structure to monkeys who live in the trees. So it's like, all right, this is not great. When we meet the Kurabanda, they're fighting a bunch of the pirates. So of course we help them out. That earns us their favor, and they show us where there's another pirate outpost that we can fight. Having fought the pirates, at the end of the adventure, there's a very neat description, and I'll just read to you. After you've fought the space pirates, as you stand amid the ruins of Slave City 1, you see in the distant desert a solitary figure surveying the wreckage of the pirate town. This creature is a tall, fur-covered animal with a large tail, large hind legs, and small forelimbs or arms. The creature has a long, slender neck and a small head with large eyes. In its arms, the creature is carrying the unconscious Colonel Louis V. Jameson. It was sort of the leader of the original expedition. This is an Iorna, who are kind of the watchers over the planet. They're rather intelligent. They are very intelligent, but they're a rather mysterious and highly advanced race, which starts to introduce a few problems. And this is where the other thing I was going to mention about Volturnus comes up. You're going to introduce an advanced race beyond what the Frontier has. And it's in a neighboring star system that people can go to any time, and they're going to have questions. I actually, when I took over Star Frontier, and I was reading through these modules, and I thought, man, there's some good stuff in here. There's some good material we could work with. And I made a promise to myself, if I'm going to do Volturnus in my campaign, I'm going to make sure it's not a crash. And I promised my players, I said, okay, we've got this opportunity for you guys to go to Volturnus. And the first thing they all said is, I'm not going. I don't want to crash on that. I don't want to lose all my stuff. And I promised them, I said, look, I'm redoing the adventure so that you will not crash on Volturnus. You will have all of your stuff. They landed, they were given an air vehicle, and they were actually able to travel around just fine, but still do some of the stuff. I discovered the formatting of the modules is such that that doesn't really work. You can't really do it. Everywhere the players would go, they would be like, okay, so we're here and we need to do some stuff with these different aliens that are here. And they would all be like, now hold on a second, you haven't passed the challenge of manhood. Or, well, just a second now, we can't do anything for you unless you go and find this statue for us. And my players are like, this is really frustrating. And I was like, yeah, it kind of is. So they would often go back to the Iorna, the highly intelligent furry lizard guys, and say, look, hey, wait a minute. We got to do this and we got to do that. Can't you guys do any of this stuff? And it didn't, like, once you get down a couple of layers, Volturnus is, as a setting and as an adventure, it causes more problems and it asks more questions than it answers. The culmination being, you've done all these things, you've encountered these other races. By the way, top marks for the third race that they encounter, the Edistekai. I love the look of this creature. In fact, this is again why I was on the fence about doing Volturnus, because the Edistekai are this strange tetrahedron creatures, I guess is the best way to describe it. Somebody said it's like Mr. Peanut with a couple of tentacles sticking out of it. It's like, yeah, basically. I really like the Edistekai. And I thought to myself, okay, there's something we can work with here. Maybe we can make this work. But it's just full of a lot of thematic issues or plot devices that work as long as you follow exactly the way these modules are set out. It works. But if you are modifying it like I foolishly tried to do, where you could then, well, you just hop on your airplane and you go over to that other tribe or whatever, at every point, something rips away the logic, and it only works as an old-fashioned Dungeons & Dragons style, marching through the desert and finding the next objective type of a game. It's a little unfortunate that way. So it wraps itself up kind of cleanly, I suppose, but not only is the beginning very, very ham-fisted in a way that is frustrating for most players, and they really don't want to play it that much. I've actually Googled a few reviews. Most people talking about Volturnus have said, yeah, we got about halfway through the first module and we gave up. We don't like it. Because, yeah, no wonder. You've been shoved into a spaceship for a very weird reason. Then you've been forced to crash on a planet with nothing in your pockets. Why would you want to do that adventure? And even if you do, like, go through the motions and finish the whole thing off, you do an epic battle and there's a nice happy ending, but now there's further questions, and this happened in my campaign. Okay, hold on a second. We've helped save this planet, so anytime we come back, we're the heroes, right? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Okay, hey, Yorna, we'd like to have access to some of your technology. We'd like to improve the medical industry that we have going on our planets. Well, it opens up a can of worms that I don't recommend. And so, to wrap up, I like where TSR's mindset were when they made Volturnus, but my God, it causes more problems than it's worth. And that opening is just really tough. It's a bitter pill for a lot of players to take. So, unfortunately, the very first thing that Starfrontiers did was a very, very big mistake. It truly was a crash. But let's get on to more positive Starfrontiers talk next time. I will answer Warren Akuma's question to show how the skills work, or at least how they did in my campaign. Until that time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.